Appreciate you guys. Let's listen to this. Let's watch this real quick and see what's going on with good old Benjamin Cowen.
Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today,
I gotta
we're
hear
going to
that
talk
one more
about.
time.
Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk
I'll
about
check my power
Bitcoin,
connection.
a different kind of bear market. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. There, we do talk a lot more about other assets as well that I don't spend as much time talking about on this channel. I do want to talk a little bit about the current predicament that we find ourselves in. And essentially, the predicament is that we know from history, whether you like it or not, that Bitcoin tends to top out in the fourth quarter of the post-halving year. Q4 of 2013, Q4 of 2017, Q4 of 2021, and potentially Q4 of 2025. Now, there's reasons that both the bulls and the bears can point to say why they think they're going to be right. We did a video on this a few days.
By the way, Benjamin Cowen, since I've been in crypto, which has been like 2016, he's gone from no one knowing who he is to if he had it in him to take control of this whole crypto market by just making an opinion to either go bull or go bear, he can change this market. Everybody listens to this guy. So, I mean, thank goodness that this guy has a good heart and he doesn't, tank the market or pump the market for his own gain. I like to see him pump it, but I don't. I just am in awe that, as much power as this guy has, he doesn't abuse it. So, I mean, hats off to him. He has a funny voice. He has a widow's peak. He's a nerd, but he's a good guy. So, and he's pretty much, pretty much has his pulse on the market, and he's been right. He's been right a ton of times.
Ago called Bitcoin, maybe more than a few days ago, but it was called Bitcoin, the Bulls versus the Bears or something like that. But the general idea is that the Bears think that, look, we had our bull market, right? We had the bull market. If you look at the ROI from the low and you factor in diminishing returns, what more could we have asked for, right? Like, this is exactly what you would have expected. A cycle, Bitcoin went up, how much from the lows? Like 8x from the lows. And it lasted the same amount of time as the last two bull markets. So we can't ignore that just because we think, oh, there has to be something else. But while it's very much the same, almost perfectly, right? Like, if any one of you a few years ago were told to draw a line for this bull market, factoring in diminishing returns, would you not have drawn something similar to what exactly happened, right? So when you think about it, it played out like it always does. But in other ways, it's so different. Because when you look at things like social interest, this orange line, it's nowhere close to what it was in 2021 or 2017. Nowhere close. Social interest is nowhere close to what it was back then. And in fact, if you were to just simply look at a metric like, I don't know, what's a good one? YouTube subscribers to various crypto YouTube channels, what you'll notice is that what we're seeing right now is nothing like 2021. Nothing like it, right? It's completely different in the sense of, like, there's no retail interest here, at least no new retail interest. So one of the reasons you get like brutal bear markets is because you have a lot of retail come in, they buy the top, and then they end up acting as selling pressure for the next year. That's what happens. But in this case, we didn't really have that. And if you look at some of the indicators, like the on-chain risk, it doesn't really suggest that we ever truly hit euphoria. What I have said, and I will continue to say, that this entire move by Bitcoin, the entire bull market that we have had for the last 3 years, this entire move is the most similar to this one right here in 2019. So when I look at a top like the one that we probably had in October and say, look, it's the same thing as always, right? It's just that people thought it would go on longer because, certain altcoins hadn't pumped yet. But at the end of the day, what if the 4-year cycle is intact? And what if we do get a bear market rally at some point back to 100K and it draws people back in, only to eventually go lower into the summer of 2026? I think that's very well likely what will happen. And the reason I say it is because while from a timing perspective, this bear market could not start, it couldn't be any more the same as all the other prior cycles. Q4 of every post-halving year. How could we pretend like it can't happen again just because it didn't go as high as people want, or just because certain altcoins didn't go up as much as people want? In that sense, it makes sense to say we're in a bear market, right? Like, it makes sense. And in fact, like, so many of the different indicators breaking below the 50-week moving average, right? Breaking below the support from the prior year. And that's something we talked about a lot, is how Bitcoin was sort of stair-stepping up, but now it's completely support and it's come all the way down here. I could envision a scenario where Bitcoin kind of drops back down and then gets this big counter-trend rally back up and then potentially drops. And so what I'm sort of thinking, what I'm kind of speculating about right now.
Gosh, man, that right there would be so tricky for everybody that's been sticking around. Because you can easily say that, okay, if we drop down here, Murad from SPX 6900 is saying, hey, we're going to be just fine. We could drop down to 69,000, like around this line, and then pop right back up and go past previous all-time highs to and continue the bull run. That's what Murad's saying. So Benjamin Cowen's saying that we could actually have that move, come back up and act like, uh-oh, Murad's right, and then go drop way down to, he's saying like under 55, around 47,000 or something like that. So many of us would get crushed on this move right here, because this is pretty much where everybody would re-enter, is around 107,000, 108,000. Like, if Bitcoin went to 107, 108,000, tell me, wouldn't you be aping back into this market, trying to beat retail back into this market? You know what I mean? Wouldn't you? Isn't that the move that we're looking for even right now? Man, this market is so tricky, guys. Doom. That would, if it did that and it dropped back down, this would absolutely crush everybody. You would not see anybody back in this market ever again. This would be and worse than it is now, which is unimaginable, because I don't think there can be any less people in here right now. Can there be any less of interest, of participation in this market right now? And you're sort of saying, oh, well, Stair, Pump Fund is still rocking. Yeah, no, Pump Fund is crushing people, bro. Pump Fund is absolutely crushing people. There's literally 100 rugs a day. You cannot profit in that environment. So I mean, but you got major influencers like Murad that's saying right here is the juicy spot, the sweet spot that's going to send this market into a continued bull run to like 170, 200, 250K. But Benjamin Cowen saying, hey, we could see that move down and we could see a rally up and then a move back down again. Um, so let's see what else he has to say.
Is if you don't top on euphoria, then what does the bear market look like? And do we have other examples? And yes, one is 2019. And one of the reasons why we compare this to 2019 is because back in 2019, Bitcoin actually topped out about 2 months before the balance sheet of the Fed started to go up. You can see that right here, right? Like Bitcoin topped, QT continued, and then the balance sheet started to go up. Bitcoin continued to go down at first. So what if it's the same thing where Bitcoin tops a few months before the balance sheet starts to go up, and then maybe it goes up, but Bitcoin kind of still bleeds until there's a really big reason for the money printers to come back on. The issue that crypto has right now is that there's not really a great reason for interest rates to drop to a lot and for QE to come back on, because while Bitcoin is stuck in traffic on Struggle Street, the S&P 500 is basically printing new highs, right? So that's the hard part. And what ended up happening with Bitcoin last cycle, Bitcoin, if
He's also forgetting another thing. Here's another thing that I'm probably gonna do a video on, just on this subject. Just on this subject is in addition to the stock market making new highs, what else is taking retail investor, the regular investor, away from this crypto market? It's online sports gambling and poly markets. Poly markets and online sports gambling is sucking the liquidity out of crypto. Traditional altcoin, degenning is getting crushed in terms of interest level relative to poly market and online sports gambling. There's an online sports gambling epidemic going on. A lot of you guys gamble on sports now, and you probably didn't a couple years ago, with FanDuel, Underdog, Fantasy, and things like that. They are now just as accessible on your phone as was and is now. But at the height of the 2021 bull run, new apps like crypto.com was improving their apps, Robinhood, Coinbase, you name it. Those apps were new and they were grabbing the attention and the accessibility and the liquidity of the retail investor. And so that now has funneled into online gambling and stuff like that. So, I wonder if Benjamin Cowen's going to talk about that. But I see that as a huge liquidity suck that nobody's really talking about. So let's go back to what he's saying here.
you overlay Bitcoin onto this chart, Bitcoin started to go down, but it wasn't until the S&P crashed that led to this major shift in monetary policy that then led Bitcoin to massively new highs. So the dilemma we find ourselves in is that there's always a bull market somewhere, and right now it seems to be in metals and stocks. You could argue the only way that Bitcoin's going to really break out and go to new highs is for much looser monetary policy. But the only way you get to much looser monetary policy in practice is if the S&P were to start crashing. Now, something different might happen. The Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, is likely going to be replaced in the summer of 2026. There does exist a scenario where they aggressively cut and do things they shouldn't do just because they want to run things hot, which would probably be a mistake long term, but in the short term, it might actually be a good thing for the markets. But what I want to say, again, is if you look at social interest and you color code the price of Bitcoin by social interest, this does not look like 2021. It does not look like 2017. It looks like that 2019 style top. The 2019 style top has a lot in common with the current top in the sense that Bitcoin topped out and there was no alt season back then, right? So if you look at Bitcoin and you look at what happened in 2019, Bitcoin dominance topped out the minute the balance sheet of the Fed really started to go up, right? Like that's what happened essentially back then. The balance sheet started to go up, and then Bitcoin dominance topped out.
Yeah, we rarely talk about 2019 bull run, but yeah, altcoins didn't do much. There was a lot of the ICOs and the things, the big ICO boom was happening around then. I believe I remember, and that was that didn't have much to do with like actual altcoins like pumping. Not until 2021.
So if you overlay Bitcoin dominance with the balance sheet, you can see that's what happened. And so somebody like, well, why do you keep saying you're bullish on Bitcoin dominance? Because QT just ended. But remember, in 2019, QT ended in August, but the balance sheet still went down for a few weeks because there was still the final batch of treasuries that eventually matured, right? It took a few more weeks for things to turn back around. So I think there does exist a scenario where dominance spikes and then the balance sheet starts to go back up, and then all Bitcoin pairs form lows, and then they go up at some point in 2026 against Bitcoin, but only because Bitcoin's dropping more than the altcoins until that looser monetary policy fully arrives. So when we talk about bear markets, and when I title the video like a different type of bear market, I'm looking at ROI after cycle peak and saying, look, guys, what if this is just a normal 4-year cycle and, this is the current bear market, this purple line, and this is what the last one looked like in 2021 or in 2022, and then here's the one in 2018, and then here's the one in 2014. What if it's the same as those? And if it is, it means that the bear market's going to last until October, at approximately October of 2026. But given the fact, and this is dubious speculation. I'm not saying I necessarily believe this is how it has to play out, but I want to put it on your radar so it doesn't come as a surprise later. Given the fact that Bitcoin is topping potentially here on apathy like 2019 before QT ended and when interest rates were being cut, then what if the bear market is not like the midterm year bear markets of the past? Because remember, the cycles will always throw us a curveball. Just like this cycle, the curveball is potentially no alt season, right? So think about it like this. If you're looking at the ROI from the peak, you're comparing the current peak to peaks that had euphoric tops. But why would we do that? Why not compare the bear market to the prior bear market from a non-euphoric top? And that, of course, would not be the 2014, 2018, or 2022 bear markets. It would be this 2019 bear market. And so when you look at that, we just added this chart to the website. If you just look at QT ending bear markets, right? Where QT ends, Bitcoin tops out. If you look at that chart, what if this is the path for the bear market? And so what could happen is you could see Bitcoin sort of slowly go lower into the summer of 2026, but then as looser monetary policy comes in, it's not impossible for it to show renewed strength. Now, obviously, we ended up having the pandemic crash and the recession. So what I'm saying is this, and I know this might be kind of complicated, and the chances that it plays out completely are probably pretty low, but if we think about this for a minute, what if Bitcoin follows this path where it gets some rallies, but it just kind of keeps going lower, and then it just keeps going lower, and everyone's getting upset, and it's not going anywhere, and everyone's like, well, how could it be a bear market when there wasn't a euphoric rally, and there was no alt season, and all this other stuff? The interesting thing is there's also a lot of people that believe the cycle will go on, right? And the 4-year cycle is dead, and all this other stuff.
Yeah, like Murad says that the cycle is going to continue. We may go down as low as 69,000, and then we're going to have this big reversal off of liquidity coming into the market through stimulus checks, through quantitative easing, and which would be easing of the monetary policy, and just other factors that are going to just bring in liquidity. But it sounds like Benjamin Cowen saying that there's going to be something else. I don't know. Let's see here.
What could happen is that you get to the point where you get to like April, May timeframe where Bitcoin keeps going lower, and the people that believe in the super cycle capitulate because they're like, oh crap, okay, it's not a longer cycle, it's normal 4-year cycle. They capitulate. What if they capitulate the lows? Because maybe it's not a normal bear market. Yes, there was the pandemic drop into a recession.
I could actually see that happening. I think that's already happening. Folks that have already, said, hey, this is an extended cycle. A lot of them, folks in my community, even myself, we're kind of being cautious now. It's not so much of a, bullish, time right now. A lot of folks have moved in the stables. I mean, look at meme coins right now. There's nobody around to buy to really put a really good rally on some meme coins. I know the Franklin Turtle coin did really well last couple of days. Kermit, but I mean, you had to catch a shooting star with those. Like no one predicted those. Not even the most degen meme coin traders that I follow predicted that those coins would pop off. They just happened to go 200x. One of them, Franklin the Turtle, went from 50K to 17 million in the last just couple days. I mean, who's see that going to happen? And in actuality, a move like that in altcoins is just as big as a meme coin going to $1 billion nowadays. Like a meme coin going from nothing to 17 million is a huge accomplishment. It's a huge accomplishment. So the folks that are saying this is an extended cycle and, we're going way higher, they're becoming fewer and fewer and fewer by the day. By the day. So he may be right in that those people bring us new lows in the next few weeks. And I'm telling you right now, we're forgetting about the Venezuelan crisis that, much like the Iranian crisis of 2025, is gonna bring the market down. The market hates war, man. And for Trump to be invading Venezuela, I mean, I know it's for oil and stuff like that. We're probably going to get richer off of it, but as a country, but it's still very bearish for markets and could bring new lows and would cause a lot of folks to drop their altcoin bags, to drop, their every bag, and this could happen. Honestly, they're in Puerto Rico right now. U.S. is stationed in Puerto Rico. There's B-52s already flying around Venezuela. There's special ops, U.S. special ops, Navy SEALs already doing missions in Venezuela. I mean, we looked at some of the videos already. That's already happening. So if you were to say, is there going to be war in Venezuela before May? It's already happening, and it's already going to come to a climax here in the next couple of months before we see actual progression in, monetary easing of policies and, the stimulus checks and the liquidity coming in. So Benjamin Cowen could be very well right here that the folks saying extended cycle, like Murad, could be forced to capitulate and say, shit, maybe we're going lower.
And honestly, at the end of every business cycle, we do get a recession, right? Like it's part of the business cycle. But the timing of that could be still much further off than 2026. In fact, if you look at the S&P 500 divided by the money supply, we've looked at this comparison many times before as well. When you look at this and you take the comparison here to 1996 and you look at a bar pattern from 1996 through 2000, right? You go all the way back here to 1996 and you look at what happened back then and you overlay it to this one, it's almost a carbon copy, including that 20% drop. Now, what's interesting is if you line up that 20% drop here, it could mean the party goes on until sometime in 2027, right? So both sides have a point, right? Like there's one side of people that are like, how could it be the top? Like there's no euphoria here, right? If you look at all the top indicators, like the terminal price and all this other stuff, like how could that be the top? Well, guess what? That's exactly what happened in 2019, where it didn't go all the way up to the terminal price. And then eventually it went back down to below the realized price in the pandemic crash. Now, I'm not saying it has to follow the pandemic crash, but just to put it on your radar, the realized price right now is almost 60K. And the reason why that's interesting is because when you look at Bitcoin, we also know that in midterm years, it tends to return to the 200-week moving average, which, oh, by the way, is currently at 56K. And remember, that's near the prior all-time highs. So, what I'm saying is that there exists a scenario where we're in a different kind of bear market than people think, where it's a bear market from a non-euphoric top. And if that's true, then we need to look at the bear market that started in 2019. And if that's the case, you could have a scenario where Bitcoin does something like this and it kind of drops down to 60 to 70K by the summer, and then that ends up being the low for a little bit, and maybe it starts to go back up again.
Which he's pretty much saying, like, how last bear market, Bitcoin went down to prior 2019 lows, right? Which was like 15K, right? The new prior lows would be around, 60, 56 to, 60K from, the previous bear market highs, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're going to have to hit that at some point. And maybe shorting the market is in order to do that. Maybe it's already begun. Maybe the local highs we're in at 93K. Maybe we're gonna go from 93K down to 60 or 56K by the middle of Q1 next year, and nothing else happens in this market. Maybe that's what's going on. I just feel like trying to short this market right now is kind of a mistake because of the liquidity, the liquidation levels for shorts. They're piling up. I mean, market makers have every incentive to wipe out shorts higher up the chart. I mean, let's just finish this up.
I'm not entirely sold on this idea. I think that looking at it through the lens of a year-long bear market also makes some sense. But this is the reason why